All right, well, thank you everyone that has joined us today. We appreciate you taking the time out to hang out and learn a little bit more about what we're doing with the WordPress platform at CALS, and give you an opportunity to ask questions. And we've got a couple demos lined up here. So first of all, for those of you that don't know who we are, we'll just do a quick introduction. So I'm Mark Millard. I'm the web services developer, and I work with Al. I've been here now with CALS IT a little bit over a year now. So, and then Al.
Yep. I'm Al Nemec, for those who haven't met me before. I think most of you have, of course. I'm the web operations manager here at CALS IT, and we are just excited to kind of get a bunch of new things going since Mark's joined us. I think we've had a lot more opportunity to really advance things a lot farther. So excited to share what we have, some of the things today, and talk about what's coming next.
Great. And so also just to note, our contact information is on this slide. The best way to reach us, however, is our team contact, which is our web support at CALS. That just makes sure if either Al or I are out, it goes into our queue, and we're able to make sure that we don't miss an email from you. All right, so on today's schedule, we have a few updates to start out with, and then we're gonna do a demo on managing user roles. So how to add users, change a user role for your site, as well as remove users. And then Al's gonna talk about some of the cool things he's been working on with the Gutenberg, or the block editor, which is the new editor that we mentioned, that we talked about a little bit in the September webinar. And then we'll have whatever time we have left. We try to have some time left for Q&A for anybody who has burning questions or things like that. So that's kind of what we have on store for today. So to kick it off, we have a few updates. So just know that this is kind of just a big WordPress core update. So WordPress has been updated to 5.82. And we work with Do It to basically, they kind of handle the big core updates, and then we work with them to make sure they get implemented and tested. So just know your WordPress is being updated. It's if there's breaking changes, we don't move forward until those get fleshed out. Also know we're continually scheduling plugin updates as they come in, particularly minor updates. Those are happening in the background. So we about every 2 weeks, we'll do a whole batch. So just know that we're keeping tabs on those, making sure that security and performance updates are being applied to the plugins that you're using on your sites. And then the big updates here that Al's gonna talk about are some of the web services roadmap and initiatives that we did talk about in September, and we're just going to kind of lay out some of the things we've been working on and what our roadmap is looking like. Al, so take over.
I thought, yeah, in general, thank you, Mark. I think the big thing is, as we move forward here, we're trying to make it clear what sort of things you can look forward to seeing happening, what sort of things we're doing in the background. Some of these changes we do, I think a lot of these changes, sometimes we end up working on, end up being somewhat, they're just not as visible, right? They make meaningful changes in the background, but they're not necessarily always the same thing that manifests in a physical new feature or button you can push, right? So talking a little bit about this is kind of a nice way of sharing a little bit more of that. So obviously, as you can see, we have a couple of things that are coming in overall progress. We're going to be planning our 2022 goals out here very soon. So that goes along with the actual full IT unit, but we obviously do sort of our microcosm of goals specifically in web services. So those will be shared as well as those come out. We have been going through, as we've been working through this year, to try to get more of this webinar series going, this being the second edition. So again, I think this is great. Gets a few more opportunities for people to learn a few things, and it gets a better opportunity for us to share knowledge and updates and things like that in a way that sort of caters to the group. Obviously, as well, Mark's been huge in getting all this going, as well as increasing the actual email communications that you've seen go out, probably as a result of that as well. For those that maybe haven't been seeing those or just curious, let us know. We can make sure that those folks are on the list. We base that list, by the way, communications purely off who are our current editors and administrators of sites that we currently host. So of those that are not already on the list and would like to, of course, that you can also sign up on the website. So the other thing we're going to be doing as well this, coming up to the next year, if we're planning improvements, is going to be kind of enrollment with some of this next point here. So we've been working to update and expand the WordPress documentation that we have, and that's going to continue well into 2022 and more. There's a combination of things I think that we know that we need to increase, what detail is available, what sort of things people can ask, better ways to find the information, as well as potentially trying to provide a little bit more multimedia with it, right? So in some cases, we may have things that are just, sort of difficult to track or follow with just text. And so in some of those cases, it might be nice if we can have better imagery or even potentially video. So we'll see how that goes as that moves forward. We also have, planning for next things is we've been working through things through this quarter up to the end of the year or the last bit of the year here, but we'll be definitely continuing that on, which is the actual block editor sort of updates we have. A lot of those things are going to be going on with their sort of new components because it's taking what has been traditionally part of the CALS theme and modularizing it, making it more available to everybody. And there's a lot of key benefits to this that I think we've covered a little bit last, and I'll cover some more as we get to that portion today. But the big deal is that it's going to just be an overall benefit to anybody who's running a site here on campus. So yeah, that's going to definitely continue as we go into 2022, and definitely the then corollary into that is going to be the new theme that is in development as well. And we have some sort of really early incarnations of it, and we can always show and share some of those look and feels as they come along. But I just sort of from a high level standpoint, as we get into that, it'll include, new ways for people to have sites that have different looks and feels that don't demand as much of specific media types. I think the current theme as well as it's done has certain requirements for imagery that isn't always present depending on the nature of your site. And so there's gonna be a lot greater flexibility there. So yeah, looking forward to doing all these things, but we'll have a lot more detail in terms of what's really coming in 2022. I think the next time we get a chance to get together. So yeah, I guess, I don't know if there's any thoughts or questions on that right off the bat, or if people would like to, we're gonna have space for Q&A at the end as well. But if anyone has thoughts or questions, feel free to either pipe up or ask them in chat.
All right. Well, if nobody has any questions, we'll move on to the first demo. So we want to take an opportunity. I think this is, as we think of things to demo, we're kind of look at our support queue. And this is one of our most popular sort of like questions that we get from site admins. So it's asking us if we can add somebody to their site. The wonderful thing is a site admin can add their own users. They can manage, add, remove, and change their role. So we thought this might be, one of these good touch points to show you how to do it. So first of all, I wanted to kind of, I'm gonna pull up a different page here. So I'm on the UW knowledge base, and there's a great page here. And actually I should preface too, I have a slide in our deck here that we will share out also that has links to all these KB pages and all the resources for how to do this process and reference. So one of those is basically laying out, it explains each of the roles that the WordPress platform has. The two most popular are the site administrator, which a lot of you are, or an editor, a site editor. And there are a few other roles, but these are the most popular. And I'm not going to read all of these, but kind of the cliff note would be, so there's a nice table here as well that shows the different things that a role can do. So if you're trying to decide if you're adding a user, but basically you can kind of see here from the table, and a site administrator can pretty much do everything. So add, edit, delete, publish posts. They can work with the customizer, so you can customize the theme a little bit, add to the navigation elements, edit, add menus, things like that. So that's what a site admin can do. They can also, again, add users. An editor then is sort of a, you can see here, is limited to mostly editing, adding, or deleting their own posts. So they can also publish their own posts. Typically, we recommend adding folks as an editor unless they're going to be needing to edit the visual design of the site, adding menu options, customizing the site in any way. It just kind of helps. It helps you maintain a little bit of extra security in your site, you know, so that folks can't accidentally change, you know, remove the navigation menu or something if they're not quite sure yet how to work within the WordPress environment. You can also see that there are a few others. There's an author. Again, it's sort of another limited subset of just sort of adding, editing, publishing posts or pages, and then contributors that can add and edit, but then they'll need an author, editor, or admin to actually publish the page. So if you have that need, you can really kind of fine grain your editorial process on your site, your sort of content editing site. But again, typically the administrator and the editor role are the most common that we see on the site. So that's kind of an overview of the user roles. A couple other things. So I'm going to show here. Whoops, jump ahead. There we go. So I'm going to show you how to do this. The most important thing here when you're adding a user is you want to add them with their uw-net ID. Okay, and you'll see that here in the interface in a minute. Now, the important thing is now that we all have email aliases, so you'll often see first name dot last name at WISC. So that's not actually their, just keep in mind, that's not their net ID. It's whatever they sort of log in when they do the net ID login. It's that shorter, usually, like for example, mine's Momolard, right? Momolard at WISC. That's my net ID, which is the part before the at WISC. So you'll just want to make sure to ask your user what their net ID is. So that's kind of the important caveat to doing this. Okay. So I've kind of zoomed in on my screen here, so hopefully everybody can see that okay. So it's a pretty straightforward process. All you have to do is log into your admin panel, and you'll see the user list in the navigation. And the second option there is to add by net ID. So you click there. This is if you need to add somebody. And I have a test user that Al and I use that I'll put in there. So you just type in their net ID. You can type in the whole thing at WISC. Ideally, all it needs is whatever their actual net ID is. You select the role. For now, I'm going to choose editor and then click add user. That's all there is to it. So what you should see, the page will reload, and then your confirmation will be that they're added to your site list. So we can see here, CALS got added. You see their email, their role as an editor, and their last login. So that's adding a user. Now, if you have the need to change the user role, whether they're going to need to do some site customization, you want to up them to a site administrator or downgrade them from a site administrator to editor. All you have to do, if they exist on the site list, to get there, again, you just go to all users and it'll show the site list. And then all you have to do is click edit. Oh, wrong user. That's okay. And Dixie's in the webinar here for us. I'm going to go back because I don't want to mess that up. So find the user, click edit. It'll bring you to the user's profile page, and then just scroll down and you'll see the role option. And then all you have to do is change that selection. So we'll upgrade CALS to the administrator, and then just make sure to scroll all the way down and update the user. And the page will reload, and then you'll get that visual confirmation on the user list. You click back to all users, just double check that it took. And now we'll see that CALS is an administrator for the site. And then finally, if somebody moves on, changes jobs or leaves the university, if you want to, and we do recommend doing this as a site admin, kind of do an audit maybe once a year, especially if you have a lot of student workers that work on your website and they graduate and leave the university. Just a good idea to, kind of go through your user list and remove any users that are no longer working on the site. And then all you have to do is hover over. You'll notice that menu doesn't appear till you hover over, right? So you just hover over the user and click remove. You get a confirmation to just verify that you do want to remove that user, and I'll just confirm. And then that removes them from the site. And that's all there is so covering adding, using, and or adding, removing, and changing user roles. Just double checking. I think that's about all I wanted to cover there in terms of the demo. One thing I did then also want to mention, so we do have a process. We do have some websites where they collaborate with users that are not part of UW and they don't have a net ID. So because users do need a UW net ID to get access to the site, we do have a process for provisioning a UW net ID to users via a tool called Manifest. In order to do that, you would just need to contact us and we can help facilitate that process. So kind of contact us, we can talk you through options. If Manifest seems to be the best solution for getting users into your site, then we can help facilitate that process. So just contact us at websupport@CALS and we can help you out with that. I think that's just a reference there, yeah. And again, here's links to all the things I just showed. So those will be available in our follow-up message. So does anybody have any questions about any of that? It's pretty straightforward, but it's definitely one of the more popular. I think it's mostly because folks didn't know that they could actually do that. So let's see. I see a question from Nicole here. Great, Nicole's already putting it into practice. That's awesome.
Thank you, that's awesome.
Very, very good, yeah, excellent.
Yeah, and just so,
does anybody have any
make
questions?
Sure everyone's clear.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna just add, I think, and I think that was a great demo of that. I think one of the things to keep in mind too, that is folks, if you have anybody that has left the UW and no longer has access to that ID, that obviously keeps them from getting to the site, but it's nicer to have these user lists cleaned up. So that's wonderful. Thank you, Nicole, for already starting to prune some of that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And for any of you, I guess, that may or may not be familiar with that menu or haven't seen that menu, that may just mean that you're currently maybe marked as a editor on the site you're currently managing. So that's a possibility as well.
That's a great point, Al. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So editors will have a different subset of the admin menu. Let me show that. So yeah, you do have to be a site admin in order to have the ad options. So that's a very good point. Any other questions? All right, well, I think we can move on. So I think you're up, Al, right?
Sure, yeah, so,
I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Sure, I'll share my screen here. Try to get things lined up a little bit. Yeah, so this is great. I would love to just share some other minor updates, because the big thing that as we kind of saw within the roadmap and things that are changing pretty frequently right now revolve around the editor and some new capabilities there. Now, I know we did a little bit of a demo of this before. I guess, first of all, is everyone able to see my screen okay? Hopefully. I'm gonna try to magnify a little bit here and see if that helps a little bit. Is that appearing for everybody? Hopefully. You see it, Mark? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as we've talked about, there's a number of things here, and we did a really kind of, I'd say, almost sort of speed run overview last time we were able to gather like this. So we've added a new component. I was going to demo some of that, and then also kind of spend a little bit of time talking about a few more details and things that are coming, things that we're working on, and sort of things that are under the hood. And then, of course, there'll be time for Q&A if anyone has questions about that. Now, I know last time we talked about this, I think that a few of you are already willing to already start to dive in and start to, try some things out and provide feedback. So as Mark noted in some of our contact information at the start of this, please feel free to submit that anything that you see or find, or if something you just, hey, this feature isn't here yet, we really need this to be there in order to use this. Those are good things for us to know, because it makes a big difference in getting this sort of adoption done. So the main thing here now is if we go through and look at the carousel, actually the new components here is that we have under this Gutenberg editor, this little plus option in this upper left. And in this upper left option, it's kind of revealing the whole library of blocks that we currently have available. Now, a number of these are native to WordPress. They come with core. Others are ones that we've added. And specifically, of course, you'll note that there is a CALS block section that appears right at the top. The CALS block section is going to be all the custom development blocks that we've put together and made for everybody to use. Obviously, the nice thing about these is that if you've been familiar with the advanced page editor that we've had for a long time, again, will continue to be supported for a long time moving forward, is going to be a much greater level of flexibility with combining these sort of things. And so effectively what you'll see here in a little bit is how some of that comes together. So today on a demo, the carousel block is a new addition we just have out there, and we are still going through and making little tweaks and updates here and there. So you're going to continue to see tweaks on honestly a daily basis. That's how frequently we're making changes here. But that is going to be something that'll help and make a little bit of a difference here. So one of the big things is that, as you know, with the current CALS theme right now, there's the header slides option that's at the very top. And that serves a reasonable purpose for a overall carousel with the site theme itself. The new theme is going to rely more heavily on the actual block component carousel, but you may also have page content now that would benefit from maybe having something like this if you wanted to demo something like this, a series of slides or something of that nature. So when you add the carousel block, when you click the little plus here and click carousel, it dumps the carousel setting, or basically block at this point, and you have to add your first slide. So if we add that one, it starts off with this space here to start adding a cover image. I think the one thing about Gutenberg that we're going to continue to have to develop on and work on over time is that it can be a little bit less straightforward, I think, in terms of what buttons you're pushing next to get to the content you want to display. So that is something we're going to continue to work on as time goes on. For today's demo, what I want to show here is that with these cover images slides, what capability you really have. So in this case, I'm adding my first slide, and I'm going to choose the media library. I'll choose a photo here from my media library that I've already added, but of course you could always add one at this time. And once I add that slide here, I'm already presented with sort of my opening slide carousel. Now at this point, obviously it prompts you to maybe put some text over top of it. You don't have to, and you could actually make this a plain image, but there's a whole variety of things you can do here. And I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of a demo as to how that looks and works. So first and foremost, if I just start to add, a title here, I might have something like this, and it's actually just a paragraph. And if I were actually to go look at how that actually ends up on appearing on the page, it's pretty plain, pretty straightforward, right? However, where things get a little more interesting is that you can actually apply any other blocks within this cover block. And this cover block does a whole series of things on its own. So number one, as you get into things with images, the actual alignment of the actual top text within the slide can be changed. And then you notice, again, a thing that we haven't had before, you can do that now. There's a lot more you can do in terms of the image itself, in terms of applying filtering. If you'd prefer an image to actually have a different duotone filter or have something of that nature, these are things you can apply. You can actually get into changing alignment of other things. And there's a whole series of things on the right-hand side as well. So as you look at things like the image, choosing the focal point and making sure that's the focal point of the image, even though the image might fit in a specific sort of landscape orientation, those are things that are now a little bit more readily available and tweakable as you go along. We're going to be including some new displays and styles that come along with things, so we'll show those in a little bit. But before going too deep on that, what I'm going to talk about here is the last couple of things with this overlay. So with the overlay itself, as I mentioned, you can adjust the actual amount and degree at this point. You can actually change the hue. There's a whole series of ways you can make further adjustments to this. And that just gets into the actual background image. When you get to the headings and spaces of the text in this nature, right now it starts with a paragraph copy. You can go in there and change this, convert this to a specific block, or you can add your own. So if I made this a heading, for example, it gets heading treatment. So it'll show up as verlag if I were to just display. So if I just hit update and go back to the page, I'll just leave one of these open so it's a little bit easier to show. It shows up in that way. We can actually go though now and take advantage of some of these new heading styles that we put in place. So Vitesse being the other primary heading style supplied by the UW Campus Marketing Library and that sort of thing. You can apply that. And we're adding this as well. We're also going to be working at adding Lato as well as we make sure these different different styles are available to all the editors as they work through things. The nice thing about this is I'm working from scratch here, and I'm kind of showing you all the little bits and pieces to build up to this. We're also going to have patterns that pre-supply you with a carousel that's already laid out with all of the copy, text, call to action buttons, image styles, and everything all in one. So you can kind of go into your pattern and say, give me a carousel, and it will place that there, and then you just have to select the images. And that'd be all you have to do. There's a couple of things you can get into here. You can add other components. So you could add copy below this and say, this is a description. Does this appear? So you can add this copy in here and decide again what its alignment is to everything else you have. And I often recommend that if you're going to take up any amount of content with this already, especially if it's something near the top of your page, that ideally there's something that the user can engage with and they can learn more about. So let's also add maybe a call to action here as well. I'm going to go ahead and add from up top here. I'm going to say, I'm going to add a button, and I'm going to say, see our directory. And within this series of buttons, you can add multiple. You can, within the buttons, you can choose styles between outline and fill, of course, because again, the way this is sort of all right is there's each component can be built on top of another one. So every single module that we build can be made more powerful by each preceding one we've already built. As we move in here, we can actually make further adjustments and set things like justification of buttons and that sort of thing. And if I just pause here for a moment and we go take a look at what that looks like, right? We have our sort of our featured image here, right? That's already giving us something. Let's do a little bit more though. Let's take this. I'm going to actually just take this existing one just for the sake of time and make sure there's more room for questions, if any, and duplicate this. And I'm just going to replace the photo on this one. And I'll go ahead and duplicate it again. And we'll do this and replace this with another photo. So in this case, in each one of these photos, I could, individually tweak where this, focal point is. So in this case, now that I'm starting to add multiple of these, this is, we're still working on the editing experience of this because we're trying to figure out what's a good way to manage this carousel. As you may recall in the current header slides, right, you have to manage things by a post type date, which is a little bit, odd and difficult to manage. This one's a little more drag and drop. You can use the actual rearrangement of slides right within the page editor to decide which one's first, second, third, and so on. So as you get through here, if I were to just go ahead and take a look at what this looks like now, oops, I'm actually looking at the wrong slide. Here we go. And I'll just refresh. So now we've got our carousel. In fact, I can actually go between all my slides. This is fully responsive at this point. This goes down to a myriad of sizes, including mobile. It's also touch responsive. So if you're on a touch device, you can just use your finger and swipe through things, and it moves pretty seamlessly. This is something that I think we'll continue again to sort of work on and make additional changes as we go. But there's going to be a lot more to I think to work on here. But as we figure things out, this will become a much more useful tool, I think, for a lot of different displays of media in that case. We default things to not auto-rotating slides, but we do know there are a couple of conditions where people might have an instance for that. There are going to be a series of options here. We're also working on new accessibility options, including reduced motion. So we do, just for everyone's awareness, if a user states within their OS settings that they prefer reduced motion, we honor that. That is going to be, that's going to override any excessive animations or things of the nature. That's just going to be an automatic to make sure that is any reduced motion is happening. But you can also choose to turn that on and off as well on your own. That's just going to be something that you can, if you want to reduce it further for just all users and that sort of thing. So in this case, we have things like, a auto rotation now. So every 5 seconds, this will go through. And the main thing to keep in mind too, is there's additional scripting. So if a user is interacting with the slide, if they're about to click the call to action, it does not rotate. It pauses the timer, things like that. So it's a little bit more, hopefully a little bit more engaging and friendly than something that's just going to start changing as you move along. So this has kind of been a really quick crash course demo. There's just additional options to get into later that we can showcase in terms of slide height adjustment movement. You can do full width carousels. All these are options within here. And there's a lot more to get into, but this is going to be something where as we, for example, update the header component to add additional font styles and sizes, that sort of thing, or additional button types, these are all things that could then be applied within this block without there being any really additional updates on our part. So that's going to be something to look forward to as well. Yeah.
We actually had a question in the chat. I did answer,
sure.
but I thought it might be interesting to just show real quick for everyone. The question was, how did you duplicate the cover images?
Oh,
the cover,
yeah.
It was more than the images, it was the cover groups. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. This is actually something that's editor wide. So on any particular block that you might have, whether it's just a heading or it's a full slide. So in this case, I'm clicking on the slide itself. If I click on the carousel group, which is this tag here, that's the whole group. So I could like duplicate the whole group, but it's basically this little ellipsis button up here. You can click duplicate and do a number of things here. There's also a series of other options in here, as you can see. So beyond also removing the block, there's a bunch of things you can do to insert things before and after. There's also the adding to reusable blocks, which is something that I don't recall if we've gone into yet, at least in one of these conversations, but it's
so, yeah.
If it's something that people are interested to hear about, I'd be happy to showcase that a little bit. That's incredibly powerful for groups that manage a site. The sort of 30-second pitch on what that really is that this is empowered. This is not meant for folks like Mark and I who are working on sort of the back-end editor side of things. This is really meant for the folks that are managing a particular site. So this is site-wide, available to all users that are editors or admins or authors on a given site. And what it means is that if you decide that you've come up with a look that works well, right, that you'd like to reuse over and over again, and you kind of want to make a template out of it rather than sort of rebuilding it up in the editor every single time, that is something that you can do by making a reusable block. And so if I had gone in here and said, this is my localized, say I have this carousel and I'd like to reuse this again and again, I can add this to reusable blocks. I can say, I'll just call it my carousel. And in this case, if I then went and made a brand new page, and I'll just do that here, I can then actually go up here and start, even if I'm starting fresh, I can go back and find my carousel at one click, and now I have it here. And the trick with this is that this is still my template. I can continue to make changes here, but if I do, it'll say, hey, do you want to update your template as you make these changes? If I sort of want to use this, you know, and move forward from here, I believe the little convert button right here is what I was selecting. So now this is unique to this page, and I can make all little sorts of tweaks to the content and that sort of thing. So it's a handy little feature to get into, but it'll be something that could become more useful. This is very relatable to patterns, as you may recall. So patterns is going to be something where we'll have everything between specific section patterns, like again, like an arrangement, a selection of carousel settings that we recommend, but can be changed, versus all the way up to what'll be a full page pattern as well. So if you want to get a sample example page of maybe a recommendation for an about page, or a recommendation for a home page, or a recommendation for you know, a gallery, that sort of thing. These are all be things that'll be full page patterns that you can choose from up here in the patterns menu, and you'll be able to choose from a variety of different types here that we're working on as well. So these are kind of relatable, but reusable blocks are much more you get to control those and decide how those work, and you can manage those and change those templates anytime. But really fantastic when groups are trying to coordinate on sort of how they're publishing their content. Any other questions at all?
None in the chat at this point, but definitely
Okay.
if anyone has any questions, feel free to.
Yeah, is there anybody mic wise that has a question or two about any of this stuff? I think this still has to be the best carousel image selection. We'll have to make that the default, I suppose.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I think it sounds like for the most part, yeah. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, were you gonna maybe? Did you maybe want to demo some of the width options? I think those are are pretty cool, and how we can do full width.
Yeah,
Or
I'm
are those
actually,
still? I don't know if you're
well,
in the middle of maybe tweaking
yeah,
some
I
of
think
those
I
or
need
not.
to
Yeah.
tweak some of those. I realized
Okay.
I kind of
No worries.
broke one of the others the other day. So
Okay.
I'm continuing to adjust them because the width, I had one working and then I realized it wasn't working at mobile. So I kind of pulled them out for a little
Gotcha.
bit and need to come back and rethink them. But that's a good way to highlight though,
We
because
can
this is
cover
something
that.
that as,
Yeah.
yeah, this will be a good thing to still show because you could still choose these. And you choose these right now and it won't break anything. It just means that you're not going to see things go to full width yet until we've got that fully ironed out. So as you work through things, you can adjust different alignments. So whether something is full width or just sort of extra wide. So if you want to do sort of a pull-out style so that one is maybe 150% width of the page, you can do that here. And those widths like this, you set them. We have them already setting within the editor. Front end wise, that's something that will be coming in the next, I'd say probably a matter of days at this point. We've got most of those picked out. So each component we work on, we try to spend, no more than a week or so working on it to kind of move on to the next one and then kind of circle back around as we see features and things are needed. So if I go back in there and actually show that update, you'll see that actually display wise, it's still going to be that same standard width. But that is something that we are working on. So it'll extend out to a further width here, and then one that's full bleed. So you can put it to full width of the page, and that'll just sort of look like a classic carousel that goes all the way out to the edges. So these are things that are definitely coming in and work the same way. I'm trying to think if there's another good example to show here that might be worthwhile. There's a couple of different layout types here and things that I know we've demoed before as well that we're working on, but each one of these pieces is sort of changing every single week. So,
Al, I wonder if you want to.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wonder if you want to show what I think users have mentioned, well, and we've experienced as well, right? Just the embeddedness of the different elements, right, and how elements are inside of elements or inside elements. I was wondering, I think showing the outline view, because to me, when we sort of discovered that of just showing, you can see, right, when you click there, how the elements are sort of outlined and embedded. And for me, that's become my go-to of actually targeting, if I have a paragraph tag inside of something versus the clicking around. I thought
that's a great point. So it's what Mark's talking about here. So if you look at something like down here, for example, this is a great example where it's starting to look a little bit congested, right? There's a lot of things going on here. There's a columns group here that has displayed, 2 columns, and within each column you have a heading, paragraphs, and buttons, and that sort of thing. You can click. The nice thing is we've added these dotted outlines of these tags. That's something that's been added. And so clicking those tags should jump you straight to that element and let you change attributes to that element. For those that have seen Gutenberg, for example, without that there, it's a lot harder to know exactly where you're supposed to click to be able to actually target something and change stuff. It gets really, really difficult. I know that I struggle with it a lot. If I wanted to change this, take this column and get rid of this red underline style of it, I had to click, had to know without any borders to click exactly right there, which is a little bit odd. And it's still a little bit difficult there. So this is a great example of that. I could change its style, of course. But to what Mark's talking about, if you click this little sort of like list, it's actually got a list view tooltip here, but it's this far right button up top here. This gives you the full tree structure of your view, your editor view here. So you can actually go in and see all of the actual structure of the page down to each element. And if you want to target a specific element, you can click that element here in the list, and it'll target it here and bring up its tooltip options. So if you ever have difficulty targeting, something specific that you want to change, that's a great way to do it. So I can select columns here, and then as you can see, I immediately select columns, it jumps down to it, and it gives me the option to actually change the attributes of those columns, right? So I can actually go in here and make a background to these columns now, right? So that's a great tooltip. I don't know, we probably haven't mentioned that one before. Likewise, I know we mentioned sort of edit, undo, and things like that, and redo. These are also the buttons up here next to it, just for those folks who hasn't seen that yet. Obviously, the hotkeys we all sort of know, Control Z, Command Z still work, that sort of thing too. So definitely something to keep in mind. Things that I'm looking forward to adding as well. So for those that may be looking into this for their content, the information, just keep in mind, you have two things here that I think are really, really helpful. Well, one is sort of, I kind of group these as two different things, but basically one is, of course, you have your type attributes as well. You have, I think there's more things we're looking to potentially be able to add in here soon, which would be great as well. The thing I think is also really helpful is your document outline. So from an web accessibility standpoint, knowing that you're staying within a specific structure or keeping that thing structure intact is really, really helpful as well. So yeah, some other really great points there. There are this is a tool selection here, but to be perfectly honest, I'm not someone who's really gone in here and changed this very often. Usually this is pretty automatic. So there's quite a bit more to look through here. And I feel like this is one of those examples where, you know, as we dive into the details here, I think we could easily spend, you know, an hour or 2 hours kind of going through every little sort of option. But sometimes doing so is just, you know, it's almost completely overwhelming and difficult to remember the next time you come back to it, right? So I think that's definitely one for us to check out. Here's an example page where we were using a mixture of the carousel and other layouts. And you can see things like overlay styles and options you can set, for example, for cover images are already set up and relied to work with things like with animation. So this all works together as it goes. Additional nav options, that sort of thing. So great. I think that pretty much covers the bulk of the items we were going to cover. Let me see. I actually have the slides myself as well. Let's see if we have anything else still left here, but I think that was pretty much it. So I could check if there's any other questions or things that maybe aren't related to these topics that people just have been kind of wanting to ask. Now is always a good time. So, and you know, for those that don't want to ask them here as well, we always recommend feel free to reach out to us and send us an email, and yeah, we can certainly help out in that way as well. I'll stop sharing here and see if we have. All right. Fantastic. Well, I think that pretty much covers it. Is there anything else that anyone has questions for? Add them in chat. Oh, let's see, we have.
Oh, we do have a question. Yep. Let's see.
Oh, subscribers. Yeah. Oh, good question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So in eCal, so subscriber users, this is a great point. Subscribers in the user role table that I think Mark was showing, right, don't really have any ability to do anything, if I recall. I'm trying to bring that back up here. It's basically they can look at the site. They technically have a user somehow in the user table. Subscriber users can get added a number of different ways. There are conditions where certain plugins, if they've enabled some way for users to keep track of users in some way, that can add it. I think within eCal specifically, I'd have to take a look and see where some of those originate from. If there's a long list of them, I would imagine that would be plugin based. There'd be something there that's probably attributing to the number of people. I know in the old system, and eCals is one of those sites it's definitely been around for quite some time. I think a number of those subscriber users are individuals that were probably there as part of older setups and administration. I can see a couple of them now, and I'm looking there that a few of them are test users back before we were even on NetID. So before NetID was the login process we all followed for WordPress. I see it looks like there's a few others as well that were probably deactivated. If you make someone a subscriber, let's say you have a user that you're thinking, okay, I don't know who this is. I'm pretty sure this person's not here anymore, but you're not sure. You could always mark them as a subscriber. It would take their ability to do anything on the dashboard away. They can't even see the admin bar at the top, but it would still be in the list. So it might be a way for you to kind of put them sort of in a standby mode if you want to be able to double check before removing that user fully. Yeah, I think in terms of like cleanup, I think that's a pretty safe thing to do, especially looking at what's those that are subscribers in the eCal space. I think you're perfectly safe to do. And you can be rest assured that if they're subscribers now and they haven't written you saying, why can't I get to the page I'm supposed to edit, they don't probably know they even had that status in the first place. So they don't need to probably be in the list. Yep, for sure.
Great. Any other questions that anybody has?
I think we got pretty
Okay,
much all that covered. So I think, yeah, if
great.
there's anything else people think about, let us know. Mark and I'll be talking about looking at things for, Mark, do you have any sense about, are we waiting until January potentially for the next one of these, or?
Yeah, I think right now we're trying out every 2-month schedule. So it would, yeah, we'd probably be looking probably mid to late January, probably later January, just to let the semester kind of get going. But yeah, we'll probably shoot for that for the next one.
Sounds good. Yeah. Well, I hope everyone found this
right.
useful, and give us some feedback later if you have a chance. So.
Yep. Thank you everyone for joining, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
See ya.